Call this meeting to order. I want to call the meeting to order for June 3rd, 2020 for the Oldsmar City Council Planning Conference update. I'm going to call it an update, a little different. All right. The first items on the agenda is the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by our city attorney, Mr. Tom Trask. Please rise.
Heavenly Father, we seek blessings on the tasks before us. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions with impartiality. We pray that our work this afternoon will find favor in your sight. This we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. The next part of our agenda is the Citizens Open Forum. We only have a few rules that you can speak for 5 minutes, give your name and address, and we have no public hearings because it's not a council meeting, and that's become a habit. So is there anybody on this side of the room? Nope. Anybody on this side of the room? At this time, I'll close the Citizens Open Forum and move right into the matter at hand. Update on fiscal year 2019-20 council priorities. And as we discussed in the past, while this is kind of serving as our planning council meeting for priorities, the purpose is really to kind of get an update, an opportunity for us to talk. If there's something we feel really meaningful needs to be addressed, then any council member has that opportunity to do so. And I think the goal is going to be a little bit later on where we meet again after we get a better lay of the land, after coming out of the COVID pandemic. We all saw that the governor announced today that we are moving to phase 2 of his plan on Friday. I always got to caution people and the fact and remind them that we have to wait for the interpretation from Pinellas County on that. What does that mean? And like the last announcement, as an example, there was something said in the announcement also, some of the marketing material that backed up that announcement was a little bit different from what the actual executive order said. And so the county, as they should, they go by precisely the executive order that the governor signs and sends out. And to my knowledge, they had not received that yet, but I bet they will today or tomorrow. And the county will work on it. Let's hope it looks the same because it's certainly some progress. So with that, the way we're going to proceed with this, I'm going to turn it over to the city manager, who will call on the different directors to provide their updates on their parts of the plan. And you have the agenda in front of you. So with that, I will turn it over to our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. As you just mentioned, we're going to do status updates on the existing council priorities. And the first one is our top priority, which is to build the downtown corridor. And the project manager will make a 5-minute presentation, and that project manager is Felicia Donnelly.
I feel like when you said 5 minutes that we should hear the clock go dee, 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 but.
Or less.
Or less.
Good afternoon, Council. It's my pleasure to give an update on the Build the Downtown Corridor, the first priority of your council priorities. So last year you approved this as a council priority. Quickly, you approved a concept plan on July 2nd. 2019. During this past year, we've had 4 different work sessions to discuss strategies, concept planning, regulations for the Oldsmar Town Center. So that's quite a bit. On November 5th, you all remember you ranked the development proposals. You ranked Simone Development as the highest for the town center site, which is next to City Hall, and Cohen Realty for the library site. At this point, I want to take a couple of moments to specifically address the Oldsmar Town Center site. I'm not planning on going through the detailed timeline that we presented at the last council meeting or 2 council meetings ago. So just to capture the major bullet points, we've have been in negotiations with Simone Development. We have began coordination with Forward Pinellas and Pinellas County to increase the density and to make sure that the land use is compliant. We demolished the former Swain property. So we purchased that a year and a quarter ago, and that's been completely demolished. The vacation of the alleyway was requested, that just east of the former Swain property. The legal documents regarding the hotel development have been created by the city attorney. We have issued an RFQ for the procurement of a consultant for all the master planning. So that's master planning, design considerations, replatting, and an actual physical infrastructure design. So that was issued. Yesterday was the deadline. We received 7 proposals.
Wow.
So, so that's, yes, that's a good sign. So the selection committee will be meeting to discuss those. Now for the library site, some of our past key actions. At one of the other updates, Cohen has submitted several different iterations of how much space to take up for the hotel development, adding a restaurant component. And then right after COVID-19 announced itself to the world, we received a phone call asking if we could pause the negotiations until the pandemic settles. So we agreed to pause those negotiations, but in the meantime, we had some other base work to do. We don't have a good survey of the 11 parcels that the city owns in that area. So a survey firm was procured. They just sent me today the boundary survey of the site. So we haven't had the slow, so if you guys have seen flags, or I continue to get calls until the survey's confirmed, I would like those flags to stay. So that's where we are now. So what are our future actions for this item? We have a long list, right? We shared that long list specifically for Simone earlier, but we need to complete the development agreement and all the other processes required for the hotel development. We need to have Simone construct the hotel. Right? We need to recommend the consultant from the RFQ procurement and negotiate a contract of their services and bring that back to council. We need to complete all of those items related to that contract. Some of those items are a long process to develop master planning. It's really taking the concept plan that you all put on paper and making that into a reality that we can build. So we'll have lots of discussions about what the open space looks like, what the streetscape looks like. All of that is in this year of that process. We're gonna issue a design build RFQ for the parking garage. So that's still on the radar. And then we're gonna have to go through the consultant selection and looking at iterations of the parking garage. And then we're gonna have to construct the parking garage. So there's still quite a bit of work to do, and we're moving a lot of different items along a pace. So a critical path is being met. So back to the library site, we've got to resume negotiations with Cohen. So and then we'll see where that lands us if he wants to resume. If not, we're back out maybe with an RFP on the streets to see who else might be interested in that site. Do y'all have any questions?
Gannon?
I do not have any questions on this particular item.
Nat?
I just have a brief one in terms of the resumption of the discussion with Cohen. It's great that they put things on pause. Is there any kind of idea of when we want to try to get that going?
I will reach out to him in the next couple of weeks. We did hear that he may still be interested from somebody who works on his team. So we'll reach out to that. He's got to do his own due diligence, which will take him a while, to see if our community can still support a hotel, a limited service hotel. It's a different concept than the one that Simone is building. So it's adding the inventory. So he wasn't quite ready from a feasibility study. So that may take him a little while. So we want him to be confident before we start entering into negotiations. We certainly don't want to enter into that and get, you guys have seen the process, and have to pull back because the feasibility wasn't there any longer.
One of his other issues involved banking. There has been an effect on lending already, and he wanted to, not only, as Felicia said, sit back, but he wanted to wait and see what the effects of the bank were going to do to his position. The only conclusion we can draw on that is the likelihood that, as we said before, we know that Mr. Simone's group had recently received a large influx of cash from holding paper on one of the hotels he already built here. And obviously, we don't think Mr. Cohen's in that same situation, which might explain why Simone seems to be enthusiastically ready to keep going forward, and Mr. Cohen has been more cautious.
Yeah, I think another point to that also would be based on what the environment looks like post-recovery. I don't know that we want to create a situation where we have too much inventory from a management perspective of the city. I think that would be detrimental to those hotels that are there. I don't believe that was the case prior to this. You know, we should have thought that there might be a pandemic, but that wasn't on our SWOT analysis. So.
No, it wasn't.
Councilmember Suraki.
Actually, the question I was going to ask, Andrew asked, so I'm all set. Thank you, Mayor.
I just
Vice
have
Mayor?
one. I missed it. You talked about 7 proposals. What did we get 7 proposals for?
For the RFQ that we issued for, we're calling it the infrastructure for the Oldsmar Town Center, but it's to do all the master planning.
Oh,
And it's to
okay.
do a design package and the design of the infrastructure. So that's actual design plans. And then the other component of that is the construction management when we put that out to bid for construction.
That sounds good. 7 proposals?
Yes, we were very happy with that.
Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
I had a question, and you don't need to go into detail about it, and that is just for our benefit up here. I know we had the long discussion related to Simone Group. It appears that it had the desired effect. Was that still the case, you feel?
Yes, yes, we're, the Simone Group this morning, I did receive a note there. They've gotten a verbal confirmation from TICO that their 20-foot setback is okay. They're waiting for that in writing before they submit us the final plans. But it's my understanding that the rest of the plans are finished.
For the items that were on the comments back from staff, they've addressed, you know, whether or not they resolved them, but they've addressed them.
Right, we asked them to hold it until they could get the TICO, because if they had to move the whole footprint of the hotel, that would affect the site a lot. So we asked them to hold all those comments so we would get them all at once, so I haven't seen them yet.
Okay.
And neither has anybody else in this room who needs to see them.
All right, any other questions? Just, thank you. Just a couple of comments discussion-wise, and that is, you know, I mentioned this because we haven't said this in a while, because we haven't met on this in a while, just haven't met. You know, I just remind everybody the amount of effort we all put into the concept plan, right? And the give and take on it, and that, you know, it's, for me, it's kind of interesting because I anticipate when we do finally get the professional who comes in for the master plan, the consultant, that they're going to look at our concept plan, they're going to go, man, that's really great. I did that my first year in college, but, and I'm being a little bit facetious, right?
Actually built that, yeah.
But what I mention it only so that our minds are open. That doesn't mean you don't fight for what you think is important to this town. But I think it's realistic to say that they're going to take it probably from a different practical approach. And so it'll be interesting to see really how good this person is if they get it very close to what we came up with. And I would mention this, because I mentioned this to Alan Felicia the other day. I happened to run into one of the individuals. You'll recall we've gone kind of through these reiterations in discussion on the parking garage about I was reading the minutes from the meeting, and we talked about apartments versus condos, and then we talked about mixed use, and then we talked about mixed use with commercial space and that type of thing. And of course, I think I mentioned this the other night about my conversation with the property appraiser about, it's going to be interesting to see how commercial space, office in particular, pans out during this on a long-term basis. What's that kind of impact to demand? Fortunately for us, we don't have a lot of it here to begin with, so it's not like there's going to be some gaping hole that possibly appears or vacancies. But I ran into one of the companies that had expressed an interest in becoming a tenant in a pretty meaningful way if that was the opportunity. And before I could say a word to them, they brought it up to me. And so I took that as a pretty encouraging sign, at least as it is, kind of going through the recovery. And I did reach out to the other one who met with us about becoming a potential real anchor there, and haven't heard back from them, but in any event. So we'll see, we move onward, right? Anybody got anything else? I know you do, you're just debating on whether you're gonna say it, so Councilmember Gannon.
After the various staff reports, we'll be returning to the
Discussion.
individual, certainly. I'll save my comments for then.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Felicia.
You're welcome.
Our second council priority
Bye,
is
Felicia.
execute
Hi, Felicia.
development plan strategies as feasible, and to your surprise, our presenter is Felicia Donald.
That's right.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Hi,
Good
Felicia.
afternoon, Council.
5 minutes. This time.
So the next priority is to execute economic development plan strategies as feasible. So the city collaborated with Upper Tampa Bay Chamber of Commerce and the business community to develop an economic development plan. You actually have a copy in front of you of the goals, the objectives, the strategies, and the implementation schedule. So we created in conjunction an existing economic profile consisting of benchmark data, which all of you have seen. We hosted 3 economic development forums to obtain input and guidance from the business stakeholders. At these meetings, the stakeholders assisted and drafted what you see in the plan's goals, objectives, and strategies. After those meetings, the Upper Tampa Bay Chamber of Commerce representatives and myself sat down, and we formed an implementation schedule and assigned who would be responsible for which item and would move forth through the objectives and strategies of the plan. So the plan was completed with 5 categories of strategies, and really it's promotion activities, government activities, business capacity, kind of improvement or growth, partnerships, and infrastructure. This is a working plan. This isn't a plan that sits on the shelf. It's also very fluid. So as we went through the first few meetings, and we still go back and we revise based on what's feasible, what's not, because a lot of the strategies were created by members of the business community, right? So we're like, does that really make sense? Maybe we should revise that a little one. So it's constantly changing. So work has commenced on several of the objectives, and then we've been holding progress meetings every other week for the last year and a half with the chamber. So as you can imagine, the pandemic is greatly going to affect what's important for the recovery efforts. So it's pretty much been on pause. I expect that it will remain on pause, with the mayor's COVID-19 recovery plan, and combining those and really honing down on what strategies are critical for the recovery for our economy. So I suspect that what you all are looking at now is a base plan. I expect that we'll continue to look at the strategies that really have a strong ROI and put some other ones on hold. So I just want you guys to know that that's, of course, again, we weren't expecting a pandemic when we crafted an economic development plan for a community that was extremely economically sound, right? We're robust here, so we're grateful for that positioning. Do you guys have any questions, comments?
Without having the opportunity to read through it all yet, I mean, something that is really important to me that we can talk about later during our discussion, I believe appears. I can't recall which page, you'll have to excuse me, but is the rebranding of the city and marketing the city, specifically our logo, and really refreshing the way that we present our city, down to even that small little seal behind you there. But we can talk about that more in discussion.
All right. Questions? Councilmember Saraki?
I have no
Vice
question.
Mayor?
No questions.
The only question I have, and it's more an observation, but you know what? And I'm always been a fan of the chamber and feel for their size, the amount of contribution they make to the city is pretty substantial. But and maybe it's partially pandemic related, and you know, the combination of them taking such an active, more aggressive role in economic development than I think at one time. It feels like, and you work with them on a really close basis, it feels like they're just doing a lot more as a chamber. What are your thoughts?
It's very interesting. So through this process, some of the feedback that I got from chamber board members and staff is that it was helpful, right? Because this process helped hone in what their strategies are as a chamber. You know, we created the collaborative environment with the business community. They really hadn't been thinking about terms of deliverables before then. So I think that this whole process has helped steer that. You know, some of the things that they're doing now are articulated in the plan as far as, you know, they're called something different, but like creating a business ambassador program. Well, now the Chamber's created a technical advisory committee to help people through COVID recovery. I think it's given more urgency to some of the strategies that have been articulated. It's just they're formulated different.
Good, good. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Felicia.
Thanks, Felicia.
Come back up again.
In a minute.
Our third council priority update is the execution of the Oldsmar Sports Complex Improvements Plan, and the project manager is our Leisure Services Director, Chip Potts.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon.
So the Oldsmar Sports Complex improvements, the conceptual plan was originally approved by City Council on February 21st, 2017. Following that, SwiftMud did not approve the use of the land, and the council terminated the agreement in August of 2018. This set things back a bit, which caused us to consider a redesign on a smaller scale. This was determined to focus more on the baseball and softball portion of the facility. As part of the smaller scale improvements, focusing on the baseball side of the facility, the city submitted a Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program grant, that's FERDAP, application for $200,000 in September of 2018 for improvements to the baseball and softball fields, picnic areas, concession, fencing and lighting, just to name a few. The funding ended up not being available that year, so we reapplied in October of 2019, and we're waiting to hear back the status on that funding. In August 2018, the city assumed, moving over to BMX now, in August 2018, the city assumed full operation of the BMX facility from the previous contractor. Feedback from the riders and families was positive, with a new culture and staff-led programming. Staff implemented beginners leagues, themed activities for the kids, and brought a new air to the facility, which helped to attract new riders. For the period of August 2018 through April 2019, the Oldsmar BMX track ranked 8th out of 15 in the state of Florida for track points, 14th out of 101 tracks on the East Coast, and 42nd out of 315 tracks throughout the United States and Canada. Unfortunately, as we all know, due to safety concerns with the starting hill retaining walls, the track was closed on April 12, 2019. And following an evaluation of those starting hills by King Engineering, it was reported in 2019 that the walls were in need of major repair. Since October 2019, staff have been working with the Ardora Group on the development of a design criteria package in preparation to put the project out to bid. Staff lastly met with Ardora on May 26 to review the 50% design criteria package. It's anticipated that the design criteria package and the procurement documents will be available later this summer. So, on a brighter note, on a brighter highlight, the construction of the Boltsmar hockey rink took place recently. So in November 2018, the city entered into an agreement with the Tampa Bay Lightning to construct an outdoor hockey rink at the Oldsmar Sports Complex. In April 2019, the city awarded the bid to EnviroBuild LLC, and construction began shortly thereafter. You've all seen it, but it must be noted again that this is a gem of a facility and has been quoted by a member of the Lightning management staff that it is the best in the country. Mm-hmm. We all know because we play, right? That's the good thing. What's that?
You said the best in North America.
North America.
More than just the United States.
Okay, sorry. And I strike that. North America, please note that for the record. So staff began programming the facility in October following the grand opening and received rave reviews and steady play. Currently, staff are researching options to possibly add curtains or modify the playing surface to address rain that enters the facility and sometimes causes delays or cancellations. Some other improvements at the facility include the installation of a new playground on the west side of the soccer football fields, which was in December 2019, and then the replacement and addition of new fencing and gates on the football and soccer portion of the facility. Future actions for this item include completion of the design criteria package for the BMX reconstruction, issuing the design build RFP, and to reconstruct the BMX hills. So as for the rest of the master plan efforts, they are on hold right now until the BMX issues have been resolved. That is my report on the improvements at for the master plan at the sports complex.
All right. Vice Mayor, any questions?
I guess the only question is how is it going with the financial aspect of the rebuild or the repair on the BMX?
We don't have the numbers.
We don't know.
At this point. I mean, that's gonna be a conversation council gets into when we have the information back.
Right.
It'll come back. I mean, we've got the design options, and then we gotta put it out, and when we get some numbers to look at, we'll have the privilege of digging into that issue. And
So our answer to citizens that ask us, as far as time frame, what are we telling them?
Mayor, if I might, I think I could frame that for everybody. We should receive the design criteria package, as Chip mentioned, this month. The normal process there would be our review, evaluation, hopefully quick turnaround, put that on the street. What that does would be asking for firms who want to be part of the bid to reconstruct the track. That process, from the time we get it to the time we get information from people that are interested in building it, it's probably going to be October-ish before we'll have that information to evaluate. It'll be at that point in time where the council will have the toughest part of the decision, because that's the point in time when we'll know what the cost estimate is for probably one of multiple scenarios that you will select on how to fix it. And to add to that, one of the reasons this is a difficult bid is because of the complexity of the possibilities of what we might do to fix it. And within the context of the lawsuit, there does need to be kind of a base scenario so that the lawsuit can proceed in negotiations with the people that are the defendants, although we want to be in a position to consider other ways of reconstructing the track if it makes more sense. So the actual bid is going to be quite complicated, and that takes time. And we will ask council to make a decision on moving forward with the reconstruction before we will know the results of the lawsuit. In other words, once we have the dollar figures of what it will cost to fix, then the attorneys our construction attorney we'll have the basis to enter into negotiation with the defendants to say, okay, this is the representation for what the damages are to reconstruct the track as it currently stands. You want to take your chances in court, or do you want to help us out? You will be asked to make a decision on whether or not we're going to proceed before we'll know the answer to that, and that's okay. We have money budgeted next year. As the mayor said, it's a total guess right now, but we have money budgeted in the budget for next year for the purpose of reconstructing the BMX track. Will it be enough? As he said, don't know. But systematically, that's the way it'll play. We've told anybody who's asked that it'll probably be October-ish before we know what that number is. That's the key, because that'll be the point where council decides if we're going to proceed to fix it, and if so, under the presumption that we are, how we're going to fix it. There are several alternatives technologically that might offer a better solution for us, but we kind of do have to know what the baseline cost is if we were going to rebuild it exactly as it stands now, because that information will be important to the lawsuit. And the reason that's complicated is, as a staff, when we were trying to compile the qual specs in the conversation with Ardura, we want as much interest. We just said we're very excited about having 7 proposals of RFQ for the infrastructure. We want multiple proposals. Well, this is such a specialty item that the people that are generally specialists at building earth retaining walls are not necessarily specialists at building either BMX tracks or BMX tracks using other alternatives. So we have to craft a bid so that it doesn't eliminate somebody that might be able to bid to give us another alternative without losing track of the fact that there's got to be a baseline there for our attorneys to be able to use in negotiations.
Okay, that was a very clear explanation. Thank you. So if it's going to be October-ish, and then whenever it is figured out which path we're going to take and which way we're going to do it, I'm kind of thinking Gator Nationals 2021 probably won't be happening,
They won't be.
right?
I would
they
commit to
will not
nothing,
be.
but I think
They will not be.
Okay.
I don't
you're
believe
probably
that,
right.
look, I don't believe there's any way that that's possible,
Okay.
as much as I hate to say it.
Just asking.
Yeah, no, I mean,
At that
listen.
point, we do have the possibility, I know Felicia and Chip have been talking to USA BMX. It's not totally out of the question that they would accommodate us by moving it. If they saw us making good progress, I'm promising
Moving
nothing.
the date.
Well, it's normally February for
Right.
us, but to another date, I couldn't put a percentage of probability on it, but it's a conversation.
Okay.
So when we wouldn't be totally out of the we might be totally out of the woods for February. We might not be totally out of the woods, period.
Okay, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
that
Thank
was a
you,
good,
Al.
that was a good question. You know, and the other thing that I will tell you when I'm asked that question, here's what I tell people. There's been delays because of litigation.
Right.
And we're really not going to be in a position to make those types of decisions and even know what the economics of that look like until the end of the year. And that's just the process we have to go through.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
that summarizes it, I think, you know, short, soundbite, elevator pitch, you know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Al just answered all my questions.
Ditto.
Gannon.
Save them for discussion, but Al definitely answered all of my questions.
All right.
Wow, I actually,
The only question I have, and it's not necessarily strategic in nature, but I'm curious, do we have any idea when we might be getting back to street hockey or outdoor hockey?
So we're working with Noah Chandrowski, who is our sports rink coordinator. I've been in discussions with him about starting up smaller clinics to initially get going. Now with the governor's order coming on Friday, that kind of opens things up from a whole sports perspective again. And although, the governor a couple weeks ago kind of released restrictions anyway, it kind of gives us a little bit more of a framework to operate in that we're comfortable with. But we anticipate having some clinics up this month, hopefully later this month. And then with not having leagues or anything during the spring, there's probably an interest for people to get going again. So we'll hopefully maybe get some summer leagues started for the kids as well.
From Oldsmar Little League, have we heard from them in terms of I saw a promotion online for fall play.
Their intention, we've asked all of the sports leagues to submit a return to play plan. How are they going to implement safe social distancing? What are their operations going to be? Sanitizing, the whole 9 yards, parents, dugouts, soccer field, the whole 9 yards. No pun intended. But so anyway, with the restrictions being lifted, we asked them to do that. They've submitted plans based on the maximum group of 10, social distance. Now, with the restrictions lifted, it kind of, they're going back. We reviewed the plans yesterday, and we made some comments for them to add a few things. So far, they look good. I know their intentions have been, typically they start fall ball later in August. Their intentions are to try to start earlier in the summer to try to make up for the lost springtime, and then roll that into the fall. So that's what I know of now.
All right, any other questions?
I thought of one, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Chip, is there anything, I see all your future actions are related to BMX construction. Is there anything remaining in the Oldsmar Sports Complex improvements that you see still need to be completed but are unrelated to BMX?
As I mentioned, we had the grant application that's out there that'll address a lot of the issues on the baseball, softball side.
Okay.
We've done the fencing. We've installed a lightning detection system recently within the past month. So we have made some improvements there, but really the focus for now is going to be shifting over to baseball, softball.
Okay. Thank you.
If I could add something there, the buildings all need help,
Okay.
but they would
Good to
be
know.
considered questionably funded because we don't know where the money, what we're going to need for the BMX repair, but if we could make improvements to the complex center, the baseball field, Chip may be addressing that as part of that funding, but we definitely have some retrofitting and some improvements hopefully to be made to those buildings once we get the financial part squared away.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I did think of something real quick. In terms of that grant funding, do we have an idea of when we'll know an answer to that?
I don't have a date on that, no. It all depends whether if the funding is approved at the state level.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Don't go far.
Here, the council priority objective next to make presentations for Connected City. And our presenter is our favorite city clerk, Ann Nixon.
Oh, yay. So connected city can be an ambiguous term, and just as a reminder, we've defined it as research and create a plan to become a more automated and connected city. Connected city is implementation of enhanced technology-based solutions to increase citizen communication. This is one of those odd goals or those odd priorities where all the departments are involved and it's a whole city effort. Being connected is actually part of our culture, and it's one of the things we look for in different ways in everything that we do. We have put on the internet, before I go to that, the mayor, of course, wanted all of the advisory board meetings to be videotaped and online, and that's just one thing that we've done towards being connected. But our biggest boost has come from the pandemic, pushing us forward in different ways that we probably wouldn't have gone quite as quickly before. I'm speaking too quickly. Thank you.
You're trying to cram everything in 5 minutes.
Right.
You're talking like a New Yorker,
I'm going to slow down.
a downstate New Yorker.
A downstate New York. Okay. So thank you, Al. Yes, I will slow down my speed.
I understood you fine, though, I can't lie.
I'm trying to finish up so I can go back to my minutes before they ask questions. I'm doing both here. Right. So some of the things that we have done is on the internet for employees, we talk to each other. We put it on SharePoint, which has provided access 24/7 and at any time. And one of the things that also does is make us stronger in the event of an emergency. If we have to move somewhere, we are not in a brick and mortar building. We've gotten to the point where we're a little bit more on the go than we were before. We've set up a new email group for external employee communications, so that those employees can reach through their home account. So from that perspective, we've increased virtually our
So are you saying
communication.
that we could go back to Prime Group and tell them we don't need City Hall? Is that, everybody up on that? No, never mind.
Well, everybody needs a place to
Might
go.
consider it after the next pandemic.
The SharePoint department libraries were created to assist with remote working from home. And Microsoft Teams has started to assist with virtual city staff meetings. Before the pandemic, we really didn't do that much with Microsoft Teams or with Zoom. And as you all know, we are almost Zoom experts. Active shooter alarms were installed and tested in both City Hall and Council Chamber. And what would happen is it's a silent alarm. And of course, that immediately notifies police that a firearm has been discharged. Secure wireless was installed for the Municipal Services Center. We've mailed, sometimes it's not, the new technology, sometimes it's the old technology. So just reaching out by mailing our Experience Oldsmar magazine is a way that we've increased connectivity, and we plan to continue doing that as it was announced at the council meeting. We've researched and acquired information kiosks for City Hall and the library. And that's just to help young people to get to know our website and what's available, or sometimes they need help. So sometimes it's like an intermediate step between talking with a person and getting something virtual. So it's just reaching kind of a different kind of niche of person in the City Hall and library. And we have designed an online portal for business tax receipts. Our next steps include working on the global work order system to kind of expand the options it has as far as public works with fleet and fire rescue. Continue with online permitting improvements. Add secure wireless to Cypress Rec Center, distribution collection shop, and the water reclamation facility control building. Complete testing and fine-tuning of online portal for the business tax receipts and launch. The aggressive goal would be to try to have that in place for the renewals this summer. And of course, that depends on what happens, but we're working forward on it, and that's the important thing. Implement cloud phone system to allow employees to use city interface for phone calls while using other hardware devices. Now this, of course, is another tool that will enable us to be able to work better for working from home and making phone calls, and it's not coming from our personal phone, it's coming through the city phone, and that just makes it more seamless communication when we're working from home, or even if we're at the Emergency Operations Center, if we have a call center activated. So there's a lot of functionality with that system.
I see it's what, on the next tentative agenda, I think.
It's on, yeah, it's on the agenda coming up. There, it's finance, so they have lots of stuff to work on. And deploy information kiosks for City Hall and the library. That's where we're at. Do you feel connected? You should.
You knew that was coming. There was like Councilmember Gannon.
I have no questions. I think
Councilmember
fantastic
Knapp.
connectivity.
Councilmember Sirac.
I'm just excited about the cloud phone system.
Are you?
I think it's
Not
a
off
great
the-
idea.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We use it. We use a cloud system we have for,
With your company?
Yeah.
oh yeah, have
Yeah.
for years. You can work anywhere, nobody knows. It's nice.
Rings right through,
Yeah.
right to your cell
Pretty-
phone.
That's all I have.
All right, Vice Mayor?
So I was going to say you're not off the hook. I'm going to ask a few questions. Because I'm the least technical savvy person on the council. And so the one question I have is, this might sound like a really silly question, but I've been told that there is no such thing as a stupid question. What is a cloud phone system? I don't even know what it is.
It's an internet-based system.
Okay, that doesn't help. I mean, that helps a little, but how does it work?
You know
So
what
you're
it
on,
can-
okay, so I'm on my computer, right? And I get a phone call. It all comes through the computer?
Let's just say this, you're in your office like you are right now, your phone rings, pick it up. The difference is, it's running through your internet. Instead of it going through the hard lines of connecting you like an old phone system, or if you're in an office, it would go through what's known as a KSU, which is that brain they stick in and they've got the phone room. That phone room is in like a server room, the company that owns the cloud system. You're just connecting, instead of there being a hardwire from your desk to the phone room somewhere in that building that you're working from, you're using the internet as your cable to connect to
Okay,
them.
that's a good explanation. Now, does that mean that people can like take their laptop to Starbucks and people can still call it's gonna go through their computer instead of them having to be in their physical office?
You know, they can log in if they want. I'm assuming it's the same system because they're all the
It'll
same.
be tied to smartphones,
Yeah.
not laptops, but.
So if somebody calls you at your desk,
Any-
it
any
rings right through
smart
to your
device.
phone, right through to your cell phone.
Cool.
Right?
Likewise, when you return the call, if you use your smartphone, or if it's going through a laptop or something that you have from the company, which is the way it normally works, right? You're calling back from your office line.
Now, is that why you're so quick to answer everything? Like everything. You're like, I'm like, what does this guy do all day?
What are you
Look at his
talking about?
phone and
I'm
every-
always at work.
I know, it's amazing. Okay, thank you for that. And then my other question is I have gotten a lot of good response from people getting the actual My Oldsmar magazine in their mailboxes. They love it. But I've also gotten people that don't know about myoldsmar.com. So is there a way to put something in the next edition, a nice big page? Look what you can, because I've told so many people, myoldsmar.com, go on here, do this. I've told a lot of people that, so maybe put it in the magazine, or that would be better than putting it in a Tico insert, right? Not throw all those away.
Oh, yeah, I could see a feature article on that.
Yeah. And that's it. Those were easy
Right.
questions.
The only question that I have is, what are we going to do about the clerk's office? I mean, I'm just kidding.
That's what I'm wondering. What are you gonna do?
No,
This little cubby.
no, I did have a question, and Al, can you guess what it's going to be?
I've got an idea, but go ahead.
What are do we know where we're at and what other phases that we might start working on again, not thinking about what we've been going through as it relates to online permitting?
Well, the first answer is yes, that's where I thought you were going.
I figured it. you'd know.
Cindy informed me today that ADG and I think it's Mandy, they're kind of back to working on it. But we have that BCS Citizens link, which is used by 450 contractors. I mean, there's a lot going on that's good, but it seems the hanging chad for everybody is the ability for an outside person to do the entire application process for a permit virtually. And I don't know anybody that you can do it from A to Z. They are Mandy and Mark Yost, the president of ADG, are kind of working on that with that focus. But I literally, coincidentally, I probably should have thought you were going to ask, but she just told me that they're back to working on that kind of with intensity. If he's on it,
Yeah, it's going to be a priority.
he's the president.
Right.
If he's on it, it's going to happen. But from everything I've read, I don't know anybody that has it from A to Z. People
Right.
have pieces of it. We have pieces of it. The BCS Citizens Link has been wonderful. It's used by a lot of our contractors, and the county's been able to handle the way our system works, so we didn't have to spend 50 grand on a seller just to match their system. So I mean, the pieces that have been improved are working well.
So for my benefit and the council's benefit, when talking about this, because it's the one thing that I do get feedback on that's not always positive, responsiveness, not getting an answer in writing, those types of things when somebody's working on a building project. And of course, most of the time when you run it down, you find that we did respond. You need to talk to your contractor, right? So there's that consumer piece to it. And I know the contractor probably does not want the consumer to be able to get a copy of the record. By doing it in an online environment, it means that we should be able to timestamp everything that's done, right? Yes. And is that what happens? And I know we were working on pieces of it. It's not an overnight project, but the contractor, can the contractor put the application in online in that portal?
We're working on that part.
Okay. And then, so at what point does it kick in with the contractor for them to be able to work? That they manually put in the application, it gets established, and then does it get processed in the online portal?
Not exactly.
Yeah, Cindy, if you could.
I'm sorry, but
Oh, no.
Hey, Cindy Neno, Administrative Services Director. Okay, regarding the BPS Citizen Link, they, if I understand it correctly, they can currently go in, they can check the status of their permit at any time, they can request inspections, they can also sign up to receive text notifications about the inspection results. So we see the bills for all the text messaging, because we get paid, we charge per block of text messaging. They're using it a lot.
Good.
Because we're being charged quite often for it. But they can get all kinds of feedback for it. Anybody can go in and make a payment on a permit. So once they get into the permit, they can, see different activity on it, if they know, kind of what to look for. During COVID, we were not, we waived the fees for the electronic payments, so we had a lot of people using the portal to make permit payments. So we saw a pretty big uptick in activity on that portal. So I think with that process, we'll get a lot more people using it. I'll have to check on how, if it's the contractors are using it a lot, we're seeing a lot of payments that way now. I think once we start charging the fees again, when the fees kick in again, that may stop.
Well, if they found it was convenient enough, then they might think there's value in it. But the question I have beyond paying, but like the processing part, right? And that is, they put the request in, the inspection's done, now it's operating through the portal. They can programmatically get a notification the inspection's done.
Correct. And they can go in from that, there's a link on the text message where they can click on that and then go into the actual permit to see all the activity on it. They can see the notes that the inspector puts on the permit and on the inspection, so they can tell why it failed inspection if that was the case.
Okay. And it timestamps when someone puts a note, when someone requests, responds? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I'll have to check on them. I'm not sure if there's, all the accesses in there, or assume that there would be some kind of log when it's accessed. But I have to double check on that.
If we could get, as it evolves, just kind of okay, here's what the system does now, here's what we're hoping it will do.
Okay.
And that would be helpful to be able to know when talking to people about it, to encourage them to use it. And, but I think that's outstanding.
Something like a current flow chart versus a desired one, or step-by-step type thing?
Yeah, just okay, here's the functionality and, who's using it, how, that kind of thing. Maybe even a little bit of numbers on it. It just, I'd like to be able to brag about it more, frankly. And, it's been a process. It's a big undertaking. I realize that, but it's been a process that we've talked about for a while. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you, Ann. You like the way that ended, huh? You're back there typing.
That was quick. Our next council priority update is to identify the areas of needs for beautification and potential grants such as tree programs and public art, and our project manager is.
Good afternoon again, Chip Potts, Leisure Services Director. So the council priority for identifying area of needs for beautification, potential grants such as tree programs and public art. So in June of 2019, the Parks Division created a plan for a tree giveaway program, the first ever here in the city of Oldsmar. This tree program would provide free trees to residents, which would help increase the tree canopy throughout the city. The program would consist of giving away up to 2 trees per household, with the goal of distributing a total of 350 trees of various types. So the first giveaway was scheduled to take place on April 25th, but obviously we had to cancel. So should things continue to improve, we are planning to redo that program at the Municipal Services Complex, and that would be on Saturday, September the 19th. So if all things go well, we'll redo that. So also in June of 2019, Park Division staff began researching tree bank programs that exist in other cities in an effort to create one here in Oldsmar. So to give a better idea, the tree bank program is a program that will be used to purchase trees that will be utilized on city property, or for use in the city tree giveaway program that I just mentioned, or for the educational purposes of city staff or the general public. And this type of program could be funded through fees collected when developers or residents are approved to remove trees without sufficient replacement based on the tree trunk size diameter. So there's a sliding scale for that, depending on the size of the tree and the number of trees that are removed. So also, the tree bank program could be funded through fines for illegally removed trees as well. So currently, there's a draft version of the tree bank program that's been created and is under review, and we're looking to move forward on that, with comment. So the beautification part of this, the staff have been working on identifying visible areas around the city that enhance the general aesthetics. I won't spell that this year. Although I do know how to spell it now. So some areas include the areas outside of the council chambers, the parking bump outs that you see along State Street, and areas in front of the Cypress Forest Recreation Center. Right now, staff are assessing and preparing to order plant material for some of these areas. Public art. Understanding and recognizing the importance impact that public art is to a city, staff have been involved in a number of initiatives to bring that to our city, both large, small, simple, and cool. Last fall and winter, if you remember, staff initiated 2 pop-up art programs. One was Unveil the Trail, and the other was the Ribbon Tree Project. Both of these were successful in involving the community and bringing art in a simple fashion. The Unveil the Trail was especially popular among families as they were able to travel throughout the city with their spray bottles and awaken various invincible animal prints along the trail and around the city, sort of like an invincible animal scavenger hunt. The Ribbon Tree Project, which was done not only by city employees, but also in partnership with local businesses, took place out here on State Street. I'm sure you saw all the ribbons and the trees and all the staff and businesses putting them up. The ribbons looked really great as they were in the trees, and it really tied into the Christmas theme just by chance as we had decorations all around. So you can see those up and down the street, and I think that was very popular as well. Another fun art project that was on the plans currently, but is on hold, we've had discussions, is with the spacecraft exhibit. Okay, so that's with Creative Pinellas, and we've been in discussions. If you remember, we were going to initially have a launch, and we were going to have programs and the whole 9 yards, and again, had to postpone. So we've been in discussions with them regarding opening programming back up, again, kind of like we mentioned with baseball and soccer and football, to provide a plan for them as well. They'll provide us a plan, and then they'll begin programming for the public. And then instead of having an initial launch, we'll have a launch for them to go to the next location. So we're still happy that we're the first in the project line. The containers are going to stay there. They're not moving. So we're looking forward to getting them back out here soon to initiate their programming. Another project related to art that you've been aware of is the engagement of public art in City Hall by rotating art exhibits. Some of these have included children's art exhibitions, the recycled art program, and the photography contest. We continue to look forward to these programs continuing as the community and the staff really seem to have enjoyed those. And then one other final project that's on the books that you've all heard about is the Angel Wings project named Taking Flight. That was commissioned following a call to artists to create a public art sculpture in the downtown area. That project will actually be located to the west of us, northwest of us, over here in the grass area between State Street and the council chambers. Currently, staff are working on plans for the concrete pad that it will sit on. And right now, we're just waiting for that to take place. And once that gets in, we'll continue to initiate with the artists to get the project installed. So that's kind of where we are currently on that initiative. Future actions for this item include determining and prioritizing additional areas for beautification, continuing to research grants, obviously, like I said, reschedule the tree giveaway program for September, provide comments on recommendations on the tree bank, continue the City Hall exhibits, install the Taking Flight art project with the wings, and then to continue with interactive pop-up community art projects throughout the year. That's my report.
All right, good report. I'm going to start on this side because I figure any question we have will be asked. And I'll just go
Okay,
with the
I
vice
might
mayor.
not know jack about technology, but art and trees I do. First of all, I would like to say that, and Eric can probably back me up on this, out of all the compositions of the councils over the years, this is the council that cares the most about art and trees, I really do believe. I mean, because so many things got shot down in the past for whatever reason. So I want to thank you guys. You guys have exceeded, this was my, I just love this because this was my council priority. and you've exceeded my expectations. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a tree bank program. I mean, I definitely want to hear more about that, so Felicia and I will be having to talk about that. And I love the large, small, simple, cool, you know? And let's see, it's so nice that we're still going to be first, so we probably won't have the same longevity of time of what we were going to have before, but we're still going to have some time to have the interactive
Correct.
and everything, and we're still going to launch it. Oh, the same amount of time. Oh, that's wonderful. Okay. The taking flight, you had said that maybe July-ish, July, August, something like that. Okay. The tree program, so you said up to 2 trees per household, various types of trees, and then what else did you say?
350 total trees.
350 total trees. So, and we'll be able to advertise that well enough to where we don't have any trees left over, like we want people to know about.
I'm pretty sure we won't have any trees left over. That's the tree giveaway programs are very popular. The ones like I live in Clearwater, those are always gone within an hour and a half. It's
Oh, wow.
Do
yeah,
about,
they go like that.
yeah, what do we do if
There's
we
lines
have,
of cars.
what do we do if we have a line of cars and then that first
Especially if it's
person?
wintertime, fireplace time, right?
Right.
Mayor.
I just could not resist that.
And unfortunately, sometimes you run out, and maybe in the future if there's an opportunity to do 2, if we have the funding, if the tree bank comes around, I mean that's something that can
Right,
be discussed. But
And maybe it would be a good idea to keep track of the 175 households that are gonna get them, and then they can't be first next year. So,
Sure, there's
maybe we
ways
could do
to
that, something
figure that
like
out.
that. So kudos to all of y'all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome.
Mayor.
Councilman?
2 questions. You mentioned the space launch. Are they in contact? Do we have a date, like August, September? Do we have a date for that?
I don't
Light.
have the exact date yet.
Oh,
Okay.
August.
All right, and then the other question is, what type of trees are they?
I knew somebody was going to ask that. There's a list of 6 trees.
Not like,
Red
little-
maple, elm,
Question, Dan.
bald cypress. I can't. Oak. I think there's a. I think there's.
Will you email us that answer?
Yes,
That would be
Oh,
awesome.
that's fine. That's all I
Yeah.
had, Mayor. Thank you.
but there's like 5.
No,
6
council members don't qualify for the program.
I thought you
what?
guys would be handing them out.
Qualify for the program. You can donate to the program.
How much room you
and
got in the back of
trees,
your
but
car?
You can't get them. Council member.
I've got a couple things. For the tree program, is that something that's intended to be an annual thing moving forward?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. And then about the ribbon tree exhibit, how many people came back and cleaned up their trees?
I don't have an exact number of how many came back. I know staff assisted with that. I don't have an exact number of how many groups actually came back, but the ones that could, I believe, did.
Okay.
I think in
jingle-
fairness,
I wanted all my jingle bells back, so I did.
I think in fairness, some of it, I think we realized when we got into the very beginning of it, allowing some of the public businesses to bust out the ladders and put them up themselves, I think started getting sketchy. Wasn't that like a little bit of a concern in terms of safety? No?
Always.
Always, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I saw what they did to the utility poles out there, so.
No comment.
Any other questions? Councilmember Gannon.
Chip's done.
Just off the hook yet.
I thought you said you had no other questions. Okay. Oh, he was talking to.
Follow. That's hard to follow, Mr. Mayor. My question seems ridiculous. In terms of prioritizing selected areas for beautification and enhancement, I had noticed a couple years back now, several years back now, we created a walking tree tour. And a lot of that signage has either become unreadable, or the wrapping that affixes it to the tree has actually kind of started to choke some of the trees or has fallen down to the ground. I was wondering if we are including that as something that will be revamped or removed, or maybe a different program in its place?
I can get with Alexis Wells, our assistant director, who's our certified arborist.
Yeah, he's
so
brilliant.
I will get with him on that to figure out if there's new programs or
Yeah,
how we
like
can
if he wants
reestablish.
to redo them or try something else or do something different. I just noticed as I was kind of running recently, I was like, oh, those trees. And then I saw your report here. Thank you. Appreciate it, Chip.
The only question I have for you, just a confirmation of something, the Taking Flight sculpture, that is, if I remember when we approved it and we worked on it, that is being set up in such a way that it could be transferred in the future to a different location, correct? I'm looking at Felicia because I remember having the conversation. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you, sir.
If it wasn't before, it is now.
Can I ask you a question? Why do you think that it would look better somewhere else than where they're gonna, where it's,
I think there might be a time when we have a downtown that
it might be
offers
nice to
up
put it
some-
where they'll get more foot traffic?
Right.
And did you know that he did sculptures for Angelina Jolie and Howard Stern?
Howard Stern?
Yes! It was.
I didn't know that.
I know, I didn't know that either, and I'm the art girl. You know,
Wow.
isn't that cool?
Cool.
That is cool.
City manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Next council priority objective report is for the Harbor Palms infrastructure. The project manager is Public Works Director Dan Bennett.
All right, man. Let me get my list out.
No, this is Dan's lane.
Beautiful.
You stole my fire, but I'm Nan Bennett, Public Works Director. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So Harbor Palms infrastructure improvements has been a priority project, I believe, since I've been here, the 4 years I've been here. So, and the objective is to replace or renovate the water, wastewater, stormwater, streets, sidewalk, and infrastructure throughout the entire Harbor Palms neighborhood. The strategies we're using is to construct new infrastructure. We want to continue to communicate with the neighborhood and the residents so that they understand the project as it moves along and how it may affect their properties, because obviously construction right in front of your home can be very disruptive. And so we want to coordinate with them well. We've also had some strategies to sequence the work to try to spread out the cost of it. It's a very large, expensive project, so to spread that cost out over multiple years, as well as explore opportunities of alternate funding. The history of the project has been such, the neighborhood is about 475 homes. The age of the utilities is 40 years plus, and in particular, the water utility had failed. We had a lot of leaks, a lot of problems, which then required us to dig up the streets and the sidewalks to do repairs, and so that also impacted all of those portions of the infrastructure as well. It took a lot of time from city staff to maintain those parts of the infrastructure. So we had multiple public meetings in September 2016 and November 2017. And then right before the phase 1 construction started, we had another public meeting in May 2019. I believe in this room, if I remember correctly. So we, in addition to the construction work that we're doing on the water system and the streets and sidewalks and everything, the sewer system is somewhat more independent. It's primarily in the rear lots, and we are not digging that up to do those repairs. So we have been doing that separately, where we've been going through for the last 3 years with a separate kind of contractor and doing something that's called cured in place pipe, where you can, from a manhole, you can insert something that cures in there and structurally rebuilds the pipes and gives them many more years of service. And so that's been going on simultaneously with the other phased work, but with a separate contractor. And we're approaching the end of that work. So then the phase 1 was awarded to Keystone Excavators for $4.4 million. They were given a notice to proceed last June 2019, and their construction activity began in July 2019. They've been working pretty continuously since then. Their scheduled completion date was this month. We have had a large number, 25 project modifications, and that has resulted in some delay in what they've been doing to date. They look like they're about 77 days behind. if my guess is they might be a little further behind than that to their completion date. But we are making good progress. We have issued a substantial completion of the work performed on Maple Leaf, both of the Ironwood courts, east and west, and the segment of Oak Leaf between those two. And if you've driven it, it looks really good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's made a huge difference in that neighborhood. I have some photographs. I don't think we're doing an actual presentation here today, but if you drive through there, the way that Maple Leaf and Ironwood looks is what the entire neighborhood will look like. They are actively working on all of the hibiscuses, the court and circle, and they're also working on Greenwood and Forest at this time and those portions of Oakwood. They will next be moving, the future steps, they will be finishing up on Lemonwood and Elmwood, and that will complete phase 1 construction. The way it's planned is we have 2 more phases of construction. So basically we started at the south end of the neighborhood, so that almost like when you mop a floor or something, we'll do the construction and work our way out so that when we leave, we're not a lot of traffic and activity on the brand new constructed infrastructure. So the next phases are the phase from, I believe it's Forest, north to Tampa Road, in the original phase, down up and down Oakleaf, and then what's called Unit 11 or Phase 2. I've heard it both ways. Tangerine and Greenwood and that type of thing. And we've been going back and forth with finance, trying to decide, well, do we do this in 2 more phases or 1 more phase? How does the money work out? And the budget people will tell us how we do that. But either way, it'll all get built. So we are preparing to prepare the next set of bid documents. We'll be coming to council soon with a work order to get the next set of bid documents and to get, whether that's 1 or 2 phases, get that ready to put out and advertise and award for the next phase. It's not good practice to have 2 contractors working in the same area at the same time. So we were hesitant to move forward on that until we have a clear idea when this contractor will be completed so that they don't step on each other. It's difficult enough for people to live in a construction zone without a double construction zone. So we're not going to ask them to do that. Okay, any other questions?
Vice Mayor?
The only thing that I would ask is, are we within budget? You know, because I don't really know a lot about this. I mean, are we in budget?
Yes, the changes we've had, we were able to contain. I mean, you would know it if we weren't, because we would come to you. We do have a small contingency, and so we've been able to work those. There's a lot of things underground that we can't see until we dig it up, and so we know that when we're doing underground work. And so that's why we ask for a contingency in a construction budget, because there's unforeseen conditions that we know we're going to find out about and then have to deal with. And so to date, yes, we are within budget.
And the only other question Dan could probably answer, is it a positive, I mean, it can't be exactly a positive experience with everybody, but are we getting complaints? Are we getting mostly people are understanding that this is gonna make their lives better?
We get both, depending on the day, sometimes from the same people. My neighborhood about 15 years ago had the same type of very invasive construction. As a matter of fact, they installed sanitary sewers and they had 25-foot excavations. It is hard to live with, even when you do this for a living. And so initially people are pretty happy about it, but if we don't get in and get out of there pretty quickly, there's something called construction fatigue. And they get fatigued and they, lose patience. And so what I've tried to hold the contractor to is, get in there, do your job, finish this area, and then move on. Because the longer you hang out there, the harder it is for the people living in that area.
Right.
But generally speaking, and I think Al's had a number of people approach him, I don't see how they couldn't be thrilled with the end product.
Right. Okay.
Watch what happens to the real estate values after it's finished.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that.
The neighborhood looks terrific where they've finished.
Total amount we're spending on this phase?
This stage is
Phase 1 was
4.4.
4.4. Our overall budget thought was somewhere between 10 and 12.
Right.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you, Nan.
Councilmember Saraki.
First, I want to just say, I ride my bike through there several times a week. It's absolutely gorgeous in the back. It's beautiful. They're doing a great job. But I have a couple questions. You mentioned they're 75 days behind. Is that because of the virus, the pandemic?
No, they didn't stop working because of the virus. Because of those are documented when we've had like a project modification. They give us like what it's going to cost to do the modification. They give us a number of days. The 77 days are the cumulative number of days for those modifications.
The reason why I ask is I noticed at the beginning, they were doing a bang-up job. They were going real fast, and then all of a sudden, it seems like the last couple of weeks, it's really slowed down. They're not really getting a lot done. Is there a reason for that, or?
No,
No?
no, that's not what it's being reported to be. I don't know. Maybe they're at a stage. They like to get all of the underground done and get enough done that it's worth bringing in a paving crew. And the last progress meeting, they thought they would either be paving by the end of last month or the beginning of June. So I think what they're trying to do is get a lot of things done to bring in the paving crew. And then once they pave, you see a lot of difference from the.
Oh, yeah.
It really makes a lot of difference, the dust and all the different things that settle down once they pave it. But they've got to get all the concrete done before they can do the paving.
I understand. Okay, yeah, that's all I had, Mayor.
Great. Councilmember.
Just one question. You had mentioned you're starting to kind of get the bid package or documents ready for the next phase, or just kind of at least the planning part of that going, without trying to, or in order to avoid overlapping and having two companies there working in two different projects, even though it's all the same thing. Is that the appropriate timing for that, to where it's going to take long enough to get all that lined up, come before council and approve before basically 77, maybe call it 90 days before they're out of there? It's enough time, maybe.
It's not enough time. We probably should have done this sooner. We were trying to gauge where we were. It's this game where you're playing how fast are we going, how fast can they get the next package done. Based on the estimate that we have, there may be a gap. The neighbors may get a gap in construction.
Okay.
We've waited 40 years. It was overdue in 20. I'm pretty sure they can wait a little while longer just to make sure we get it right.
Oh.
Can I wait a little longer?
My question was mostly asked by Councilmember Saraki. The 77 days that have been backlogged and the modifications, were they largely due to unexpected discoveries underground? Yeah,
Primarily.
that was what I thought. Okay.
I think you can make a point also that this would have applied to the beginning of the project, but if council remembers, they also were the vendor project manager for our downtown water main project. So the argument about them possibly being spread too thin might be not totally out of line. And that causes delays also. But it would have likely shown, not to your point, but it would have more likely shown at the beginning if that were totally true. We were getting after them to get started, that's true.
It just seemed like they were moving so fast, and then all of a sudden, it just seemed they're not as fast anymore. I don't see as many trucks going by either. The trucks were constantly going by, and I don't see it during the day anymore. So I was just, who knows?
How big was the contingency that we put in phase one?
It's 10%.
How much of that have we gone through?
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head.
Half, most? Okay.
I don't remember
Fair
numbers.
enough.
I don't like to make them up.
I'll put you on the spot. What's that?
What was the question in here?
The contingency part of phase one. I was
Oh.
just curious how much of it we've gone through to this point.
Oh, how much did we go into?
Yeah.
Oh, we'll get that for you. I don't.
Yeah,
know.
I'm curious, just so we kind of understand where we're at. I mean, look, the reality of it is, whenever I get a complaint from somebody about this, they'll talk to me for about 2 minutes. Because I go, do you know how much money we had to borrow and we're spending on this project? Oh my God, these past mayors, they didn't do what they should have done. This may not be the way I say it, but, and the conversation always ends. It's amazing.
The only
So-
complaints I've really heard, Mayor, are speeding over the dust. That's
Yeah.
all, that's the only thing I hear.
It's a huge
from the
investment.
neighbors.
It's one that we should have made years ago. And it is one of the after public safety. it is, to me, the second fundamental that we have the responsibility to deliver. It's just not the sexy part, so.
Drinking water helps public safety.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Touche. Touche. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Nan.
Okay, our last council priority update is to develop strategies for the maintenance of existing infrastructure. And once again, our project manager is Felicia Donnelly. Game show host, I think.
She doesn't get paid by the priority, does she?
Here's Felicia.
Develop strategies for maintenance of existing infrastructure. Last year, we presented you with a maintenance of buildings. It was a big black book of a schedule that provided a comprehensive inventory and assessment of all the city buildings and provided a loose capital schedule. And then during that conference, it was very well received, and it was requested that the city develop this kind of tool for all city infrastructure. So this was approached using in 5 different categories. So we have park amenities, we have sanitary sewer, we have potable water, we have roadways, stormwater systems. So for the park amenities, Leisure Service staff has created a park asset inventory in March of this year, and that includes all amenities located within city parks. Inventory identifies and quantifies items like benches and tables and water fountains and other park amenities while noting a cost to replace them. To approach and calculate our sewer maintenance needs, the city contracted with Zone Robotics. You all approved the contracts with that to assess a total of over 100,000 linear feet of 8 to 12-inch sanitary sewer lines. They use robotic cameras to provide a condition evaluation and to identify needed repairs. The plan is to assess the sanitary sewer system in increments until the entire sanitary gravity piping system has been evaluated. It's quite the undertaking. To address the city roadways, the city periodically assesses infrastructure using a nationally accepted Paver 8 model for condition assessment. That is how that we determine which roadways get resurfaced. It's a little different with the potable water system. As the expected life of underground water lines is variable because of the inconsistent soil conditions. So sometimes it's not about the pipe, it's about what's around the pipe. So we track the failures and the repairs in a database right now, and then we put that in a geographic information system so that we can plan maintenance activities. So then when things start failing over and over and we can see that in a location, Harbor Palms is probably a good example of that, then that alerts us to the maintenance needs. And so the last category is our stormwater infrastructure, and to ensure the integrity of that, it's inspected for failure or blockages by our maintenance staff before and after each major rain event. We know exactly what's going on. In addition, the system is thoroughly inspected by a licensed professional engineer twice a year. Actually, it says biannually, just twice a year. Just making sure it doesn't translate to every 2 years. So our future actions, our leisure services staff will continue to update the maintenance of building schedule that you guys received last time. And then they're gonna create the same format for the park assets so that we can address those as they need replacement. And then it's anticipated that Zone Robotics will complete the sanitary sewer assessment in the next 2 to 3 years. So it's a long process to get that. And then we're gonna continue to assess roadways, stormwater, and potable water systems the way that we're doing now.
Questions?
I have no questions.
Councilman?
I've got one. In regards to the Zone Robotics, with that taking 2 to 3 years, the things that get checked first early on, is that any risk of, then at some point later on, it could, I guess it'll pop up if it becomes an extreme scenario for that. But that time frame, it wasn't any cause for concern.
Nan Bennett can answer that question.
A industry standard is like once every 7 to 10 years.
Okay.
And because they're using the robotics, they're doing it a little bit quicker. And yes, it is iterative. You know, you might get a couple of years off and then, you know, you have to start back up. I was able to get this year's results. They were literally mailed to us today. And they've inspected 678 pipe segments, of which 86% were in good condition.
Nice.
Thank God. I thought you were gonna say
10%
bad.
were in fair condition, and 4% were in poor. So what that allows us to do is really focus our monies on the problems that we have. We're fortunate, we have a fairly young sewer system relative to a lot of the rest of Pinellas County. And so the younger your pipe system is, the less problems you have. But 4% of poor condition is pretty darn good.
Yeah. Wow.
Very cool. Thanks, Nan.
That's all I have.
All right, Councilman Saraki.
I don't have any questions. Great job.
Very good. Vice Mayor.
I'm just impressed that you guys inspect before and after every major rain event. So you got to look at the weather. Oh, a storm's coming. Let's check everything. And then after the storm, oh, let's go check everything again.
Absolutely.
I didn't know that we did that. No, this is great. Thank you.
Thank you. I probably more discussion, so with council. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, that concludes the council priority update status reports. I did get the information you were asking about the contingency on the Harbor Palms project in a total of 4.4 contingencies, roughly 10% worked into there. We've spent $369,434 of it.
Got it. All right. All right. So here's what I'd like to do, is just kind of go around discussion if there's any particular topic. I'm still gonna like call on everyone so it's not so crazy. I know that you have quite a few things. I'm assuming Council Member Gannon, or at least you indicated that, so I'll let you start with discussion.
Before I get into it, let me ask you, are we intending on modifying any of the priorities today, or just discussing in general thoughts about the
I
priorities?
think it's appropriate for us to discuss in general. I don't know that we modify at this point unless there's somebody who really feels like there's something that is just completely inappropriate or needs to be modified. Certainly, if you think that that is something that's coming, we should probably put it out there. But my preference would be that we wait till we get a little bit, because, you know, we could find out, you know, some horrible news, you know, that's the after effect.
Of COVID.
And it would be kind of a fait accompli that we need to change and focus on that, right?
Well, the good news is that substantially decreases the amount of comments that I have. Which I know that you're happy to hear.
No, go ahead.
The two things that, well, maybe not two, that I wanted to talk about, really seeing some action on, I guess. And they do fall within the existing priorities, which is a good thing. The priority number 2, execute economic development strategies as feasible. I think that's going to be, as Felicia Donnelly mentioned, a moving target in the wake of COVID-19. But one of the pieces of that plan, I think we can call it the economic development plan as feasible, is a sort of undertaking to rebrand the city, including the design even of our seal and kind of revamping how we present ourselves from a marketing standpoint. And I think that that's really important. I noticed that it was on year 1 of the implementation schedule. So I'm not sure that it needs to be added as a priority, but it was something that I wanted to mention that was particularly important to me, that we work on. I know that communications, marketing, and the arts is already kind of toying with that as we speak. But, you know, I think in paying homage to our history, we can stand to kind of look toward the future and kind of look at, not necessarily copy what other cities are doing, but, Clearwater went through this process, Largo recently went through this process, and I'm not saying we need to spend $500,000 to come up with something expensive and completely new. I just think that it's time. I think it's time. The Oldsmar Sports Complex improvements, I think does need to stay, as Chip mentioned, all future stuff is really BMX, baseball, softball. I was not aware of the buildings that required some more focus, so I think that's important to keep. The strategies for maintenance of existing infrastructure, it sounds like now we just need to use those strategies we've created to maintain existing infrastructure. The one thing that we dropped off last year was sort of the multimodal transportation plan. And that's okay. That's okay. But in 2016, we were talking about golf carts everywhere. In 2018, we were talking about golf carts everywhere. In 2019, if you read our report from last year, we had an entire discussion about adding it to the agenda. Where are the spots that it's not allowed, where it is allowed, what is the roadblock? And we actually recently discussed it again at a council meeting. And so I don't know where that falls in our council priorities, and it never really got much traction since our last year planning conference, but I really would like to see that gain some traction in the future. I, again, don't know where that falls in our priorities, but if there's an opportunity economically, I guess I don't know what kind of economic impact it might have
I
on
think
us.
that's an ordinance issue versus necessarily priority that we add to an
Sure.
agenda and we make it an item that we follow through with.
Right. It's just that's what we said last year and the year before, like adding it to the agenda and
Well,
making it an item. I
but-
see it's like a
But
lot
I,
of.
but I am going to mention that, I do not believe that the council was totally in favor of it, which was part of the reason I don't believe that it moved on to let's make it an agenda item, let's get the public out, and so I think that's the reason why.
Sure. And that's why I'm bringing it up, because it's a different council now.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Just one other thing on and I don't know how this fits in, but I wanted everybody to just kind of, put out there what they were thinking when they were reviewing the council priorities. And we don't yet know, I know we've seen a couple potential scenarios for the city's outcome after this COVID-19. And you mentioned our property appraisers' sort of concerns for commercial space, and I'm thinking ad valorem dollars, I'm thinking where do we end up? And I'm hoping that somewhere in these priorities is maintaining the city's financial stability. And I don't know how we do that, because none of these priorities are cheap. But I know that our administrative services staff and our city manager make every effort to find economies, and efficiencies where we can, but it's been on my mind. So those are just my general thoughts.
Well, I don't know if we want to have some discussion on those thoughts, and we can make it a little bit free-flowing, and then make sure if there's something that wasn't discussed, people can
I
add.
like that idea.
I mean, because it's one thing to be able to go person by person and nobody comment on it, then it doesn't really get discussed, right?
True.
And so I agree with you on the rebranding issue, because I do recall when we were going through that process with businesses in the area and some of the discussion from the community, it's not necessarily or by any means abandoning, the history, but rather how do you take that history and make it a little bit more modern,
Sure.
right? That kind of thing,
Exactly.
And so on the economic side, we don't know yet, but that's going to be, a huge question. I didn't say this earlier, but, our tax property appraiser, at least while we're talking about ad valorem taxes, he has built this model internally that is forecasting. Now, it's going to be fluid, just like ours, right? And so it's kind of interesting to me because I realized that our internal modeling wasn't based purely on ad valorem, but that's clearly a huge part of it. He was in that 8% range in terms of loss.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think the consensus might be, the numbers are that we gained about 7% in taxable value.
Yeah.
So which we're not budgeted yet on the gain, which means it's probably gonna wipe out the gain that we had this past year.
Yeah.
Is kind of what their thoughts are early, but it's early. And so it's kind of zero gain, which when you're planning multiple big projects, that gain is part of what gets you there, right? And so I think that becomes the unknown. And then it always becomes, I mean, look, let's just be candid as can be on BMX. I'll preface my remark by saying I want to rebuild the BMX track, but I do not know that we can afford to do it. You know, that's making hard decisions.
The hard reality.
And, you know, you always have to, I think it's an attraction that we have become very well known for in a community that I don't know has a lot of assets that are that marketable at that level, right? And so, you know, there's some goodwill in that that's hard to get your arms around. I don't know if it's one of those things that we ultimately, when the numbers are in, which they're not yet, whether it's one of those things that you go, well, there might be 2 phases to rebuilding, and it becomes the only way you can afford it is it's stretched out. You know, we don't know what those numbers look like, right? But I think that is a very realistic conversation that we're going to have as a council. I know it would upset some people if we didn't rebuild it. It would upset me. But you do ask yourself the question of who's paying for it and who uses it. And that becomes a question. You know, frankly, even when you're investing in a park as a whole, a lot of citizens tell me they've never even been to the park. You know, their taxes were paying for it. And so certainly it's an investment for our kids and it's important. And I, you know, not suggesting that we would never continue with investing in it, but those types of questions will probably be questions we face soon. So any comments on?
I'd like to kind of go off on the golf cart discussion a little bit. I'm sure, as at least some of you might be aware, there was an online petition that's active right now for kind of expanding access to the north side of Tampa Road. And also based on my previous experience serving on an ordinance review committee, it was discussed at length there too. So I think there's more people that are open to the idea. They probably, maybe not as many people have signed a petition because they don't even have a golf cart yet because it's not allowed for them. So they kind of are indifferent about it at this time. But I think it, you know, provides opportunity to where when we do have a downtown to kind of help reduce congestion. And granted, it's already over here, so not a big deal, but it does seem like it's gaining traction in other areas where they want it. You know, it's kind of, that's where it all stemmed from. It was asked upon the council previously to say, we want this. The plan was presented and then it was approved. So I think it's something to definitely consider, whether it winds up as a priority or not, specifically to just golf carts. It's probably, yeah. I mean, I would be one in
Agenda
favor
item.
of of more of a, whether it's multimodal transportation or alternative transportation type.
It is my
Priority.
intention to add it as an agenda item after we've been opened a couple times where the public could come speak about it, just so you know.
Perfect.
And we'll put it on there as an agenda item, and in the one meeting we had online, I know Tom was going to take a look at some of the language that other cities use, so that we can have that conversation more in depth. And then, put it to a vote, and, so.
When you say north, you mean north of Tampa Road?
On the
Your
north,
neighborhood?
not asking for crossing Tampa Road, just to be using it on the other side of
Okay.
Tampa Road, so
Understood.
Forest
In
Lakes.
those neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's.
I know that in Harbor Palms, there's golf carts all over the place and it's not really
Allowed.
allowed.
That was discussed in the ordinance review committee.
And it's not allowed because of your covenants, right, within your
There
HOA?
is no HOA. That HOA went defunct in '74, I believe. There is
Oh,
no
I
HOA in
misunderstood
Harbor
that. I
Palms.
completely misunderstood. I thought there was one specific
No,
there.
my HOA, East Lake Oaks, is allowed golf carts and there's lots of them. And people love it.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Vice Mayor?
On the golf cart stuff, okay, so what we have right now is it's okay in our neighborhood, like Old Oldsmar, but it's not okay in Harbor Palms and it's not okay in North Oldsmar, right? Is that-
Nowhere
is that
across Tampa
true?
Road.
Yeah, it's
Not
not.
North Oldsmar, but
Well,
north of Tampa Road.
here, it's not, the question is, or what's been discussed, is shouldn't it be allowed, at least from the city ordinance standpoint, within the city limits,
Yeah.
period?
Why
Now-
did it only get in one area?
Well, I think originally there were issues as it related to HOAs, and nobody asked for a specific area. I believe that was the case going back a ways. And even if that still exists, we could do that. But in any event, we're going micro on a level that's,
Right, right.
Yeah,
I'm
we
gonna
can-
add it to an
we can
agenda
talk
item,
about
and
it
we'll
on
have
the
that
agenda, yeah.
discussion then, and.
I think the broader stroke in terms of alternative or multimodal transportation is probably appropriate, given the future density that we're gonna have, especially around here, as a priority. And then obviously, just with the rest of the current priorities, they are pretty broad stroke priorities, and it makes sense, okay, it's gonna carry over from 1 to several years before, Harbor Palms could still be on there for 2 more years or something or more. I don't know the timeline, but several of those are gonna stick. Eventually, they may fall off, but
Hopefully
having
they'll
those broad,
flow.
having those broad stroke, because getting too focused on something, then it's like be churning and burning through priorities right and left, and then you'd have to have a longer list.
Councilmember Siraki.
The only thing I noticed that wasn't on here was the Twin Lakes, which I kind of agree, because we got a lot going on. We talked about that in years past. I'm kind of glad that's not here, because that's way down the road. And then the only other thing is I'm really concerned about the Simone update. I really wanted to get that moving on where we stand with that, and I want to just make sure that we keep on him so we can move forward with the downtown development. And also now the Cohen update, now that we're getting back in the swing of things and things are getting a little bit back to normal the next couple weeks, I'd like to see updates on those 2 items especially. But other than that, Katie really covered a lot of everything I was going to ask.
Very good. Vice Mayor.
So this is kind of like an abbreviated annual planning conference.
Yep.
Usually it's all day, and sometimes we drop some of the priorities off because we're doing it, we've already done them. But this year, it seems like we're in the process of doing all the priorities, with the exception of the ones to consider in the future, the rebranding, the arts district and stuff. So is my understanding correct that we're just reviewing all of this stuff? We're not dropping off and adding on today?
What the intent is to get an update on it, kind of wondering, as we've said earlier, thinking about where the community is at as a whole, making changes right now when it might very well prove that there'll be a very evident new priority for us if things don't recover well, and that it might not make sense to try to jump in there and make wholesale changes. I will also say this just as a whole, for everybody's benefit. Part of the reasons, this is just a personal opinion, but part of the reasons that we historically tend to make progress on things is our councils don't have a tendency to make wholesale changes, even from council to council, right? They kind of recognize that most of their priorities aren't going to be done in a 12-month period.
Right.
And so there's not this expectation that every time they get together, they're going to just throw out one and put another one in and, so that there's more continuity and that's why a lot of candidates running for these seats up here are asked about, how do you feel about the priorities? So that
Yeah.
you kind of know that going in, because if they're like, hey, we're able to change this and throw this out, throw that out, the taxpayers can't afford it.
Right. So so we might have another one depending on the recovery toward the end of the year to have possibly addition or subtract, probably not a subtraction, because everything that we're doing is all still going to carry over to next year. So it's possible that these could be carried over council priorities for 21.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm good.
I mean, if there's something in particular that you want to bring up.
I got my trees and art. I'm good.
I did want to highlight one other thing that Felicia kind of really, brought up in her presentation about the economic development. Obviously, that would have carried on as it was intended originally had there not been a pandemic. But I think the fact that that work was done, and as an example that she provided, was they were able to pull something from that, jiggle it up,
Yeah.
remold it, and it applied to what's going on now. So I think that packet, which I got to read through some more, but I think there's going to be a lot of good that comes from that council priority. We don't necessarily have to change it because now it has to apply to a pandemic too, but
That's a
it
good
just
point.
it just highlights the necessity of having that. And maybe that's, I don't know if that needs to be number one because downtown is right there too, but they kind of go hand in hand. So I just wanted to point that out. I think that's, in light of everything that's happened, it's a really good one to have on our list.
The only thing that I would add for the purpose of discussion, or just a short discussion, because we'll figure out where the community's at economically, right? And that is talking about the development strategies for maintenance of existing infrastructure. I'll remind everybody, one of the things that we talked about, be it briefly, in supporting that priority was that the council take a look at, specifically for the enterprise funds that are responsible for capital infrastructure, is taking a look at whether or not the council at some point might want to consider some type of capital improvement fee on those utility bills. Just going to say it's probably not a very popular subject, but I would make the financial argument that, and I don't know the numbers, but hypothetically, if there had been some $5 charges for the capital improvement fee being banked over the years, how much money would there be that we were potentially getting an investment income on to further grow that versus the opposite of where we're taking multi-million-dollar loans to fund it. And so it starts to become, to me, one of those, do we look at doing something like that to really, I'm just going to tell you, it's not going to be anything this council will ever benefit from, right? But a long-term plan that, 4% failed in just one of those categories. It's like 27 different links, different areas, right? And when we get everything knowing, do we ever want to wait till we're, and I'm not suggesting we're waiting now, I don't mean it that way, but financially, do we ever want to find the city in a position where we were with Harbor Palms? Because I can tell you from previous councils that it was such an unattractive financial event to tackle. There wasn't a lot of enthusiasm for a lot of years to tackle a problem that was known because the cost was known. And so I mention this, I'm not looking, because we're not making any changes now. It's gonna be my intention for us to get into that kind of difficult discussion. You know, these are enterprise funds, which of course means they should be self-sufficient. And should we not try to set them up on that infrastructure where it's just a different way to plan financially long-term, so that there's this, you know, fund growing, that it's, you know, it certainly would take someone who's an expert to understand what the likelihood of failure is, the likelihood of needing money, the likelihood of interest earned possibly, as to determine what is that fee? Is there such a fee? You know, is it not, because the numbers don't work, right? Where you're like going, well, that's great, you're gonna add $100 to everyone's bill every month. That doesn't work, clearly. But I mention it only because, you know, I think all of us, none of us are gonna be on this council forever. And some of the questions you ask yourself are, how am I leaving it on some of the core functionality that our city provides? And
We're not
20
kicking the
years
can
from,
down the
that's
road.
right, 20 years from now, do they say, God, that council was so smart. They really, really set us up. And so I mention it.
Can we ask questions about that, or do you want to wait for a deep dive on that later?
Well, go ahead, ask a question.
Well, equally as unpalatable for, I mean, what are we up to, 30 years now, is a change in the millage.
No question.
I mean, we pride ourselves on that, and that's great, that's okay, but at some point, it becomes one of those excruciating, unpalatable discussions that no council wants to have. Well, you know, at some point, we're handicapping ourselves in a way. And I'm not sure of the economics. I would need a financial advisor to explain to me what impact that would have versus like a fee-based, consumption-based model as opposed to that. But it's something that I've thought of as well, that nobody likes to talk about, you know, and I see year over year, and I know that our city manager will never bring it to us unless we ask him to. But it's crossed my mind, the analysis.
I wouldn't bet on that. But.
It's crossed my mind, the analysis of a fee-based sort of discussion or a millage-based discussion, what the financial.
But there's some issue as it relates to using ad valorem taxes, paying for enterprise fund requirements. You know, and so I'm not 100% sure the intricacies of that.
Right.
But to your point, keeping in mind, there is in my mind anyhow, there is a difference when our taxable values go up every year.
Except this year.
Except this year, which
Yeah.
is maybe the time to have that conversation, which always people, you
And
know.
for how long, we
Right.
don't know.
So, and there's this, and we're getting deeper, but
I know.
with Save Our Homes and of the taxable value, even if the value goes down, to the consumer, the impact may not be felt as much
Right.
anyhow, right? So, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the exemption.
Because because of their exemption. Now,
exemption.
that's not the same on commercial, right? But, so even though we haven't, the thing about ad valorem is every year that, like, what was it last year, or the year before, it was what, 8%? We had an increase in ad valorem taxes, I believe it was.
I think it was more like 7, but you're close.
Okay. And so Joe Consumer, who's paying, they saw an increase. You know,
Whereas,
so in theory, while we didn't change our rate, you know, it comes back to the truth in lending law,
Sure.
right? Requirement.
right, you send out the trim and they see where it's coming from and who's doing it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where the trim, I mean, some would argue in that is that, well, you have been getting increases, you just haven't changed your rate. It's been a reflection of property value, and my position as a citizen has always been, well, it says to me that you're doing a good job. You keep increasing my value as a city, I'm pretty good with that.
Then I'll deal.
But when you start changing the rate, that might be where that argument, so that's why I've always viewed it as, well, maybe there's a capital improvement fee. But to your point, I'm up for having those kinds of conversations with this council, if this council is, and that's the only reason I brought it.
Thank you, Katie, for bringing that up. I've talked to Al about it a couple times, and he doesn't
Never
like talking
fun.
about it.
Well, most elected people don't like talking about it as a whole anyhow.
Yeah,
Yeah, but Katie's right. If it's if it becomes a reality, it becomes a reality.
Yeah.
But I do believe that our city manager would keep us well informed on
Well, we
that.
see the numbers, so I mean,
Yes.
you know, and the projects, so.
It's our job to do the unpalatable sometimes.
This is true. Well, this is an excellent note to end this meeting.
I know, I wanted to make sure that we were really excited
Let's
at the
raise
end.
taxes.
Oh, I just wanted to say
I
one
didn't say
quick thing.
that.
Yes, go right ahead.
About what you said about the maintenance and kind of having the vision, forward vision about projects that we don't see coming. It's almost, I kind of relate that to some of what I do in my job of risk management. You know, you have a matrix and you know what's likely to fail when. So if you look at that from these broad levels of projects when it comes to infrastructure, which it wouldn't surprise me if they have something along those lines internally, but for us to have that vision of years down the road type thing and understanding what can we do to help that and bring that risk down, I think is something that would provide a lot of value. A
I
higher
agree.
note than the increasing taxes.
That was gonna be funny, but I'm gonna leave it alone. It's kind of joke. All right, does anybody have anything else they'd like to say? Go to the order?
Thank you so much
Yeah,
to all the
thank you,
staff for
everybody.
preparing these reports.
Appreciate it.
Great job.
Fantastic, thank you for being
City
here.
manager, anything you wish to add? No, sir. All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Discussion, seeing none. We're adjourned.